here from the Touratech USA showroom in downtown Seattle, and today we're going to be installing these BMW F850GS upper fairing crash bars. Today we've got a BMW F850GS here that we're going to be working on. These crash bars are made out of stainless steel. They're 25mm diameter tubing and they're electropolished stainless steel. There's no coating or paint to rub off on these, so they look great for a long time. These crash bars are made to match the BMW lower crash bars or the Touratech lower crash bars. They can be used either way. So let's break into the hardware kit and see what's included. We've got 4 M6 nylock nuts, 4 M6 washers, 4 M6 button head bolts, 2 M8 nylock nuts, 4 M8 washers, 1 11mm M8 spacer, 3 M8 bolts. This long one has a socket cap on it, and then these two shorter ones, there's a 35mm and a 25mm. The 35mm bolt and the 11mm spacer are used on an F750GS, so we aren't going to be using these for our installation on the 850. And then we have a 54mm M12 spacer, a 7mm M12 spacer, an M12 washer, and an M12 bolt. To complete this installation, I'm going to use these Cruise Tools 3/8 drive Allen and Torx wrenches. I've used a 10mm and a 4mm Allen tool, a T55 and a T25 Torx tool. I've used a 6mm Allen L wrench. I've used 2 13mm combination wrenches. If you have one ratcheting combination wrench, that's even better. I've also used a torque wrench and an anti-seize stick. Now that we have all the parts and tools together, let's head over to the bike and get to work. This installation requires mounting a front bracket for the crash bars that attaches on the front subframe of the motorcycle. And in order to make that easier to reach, we're going to remove the bodywork on the front half of the bike here. So the first step to doing that is to remove the seat. First body panel to remove is this tank shroud piece here. It's got 2 bolts at the back, 2 bolts at the front, and then you just give it a good yank to pop it loose. Next piece to remove is this side panel here. It's held on with 2 bolts that are accessed from the inside, and then you just give it a good pull. It has 2 clips roughly here and here. Now remove the black plastic beak extender. There's 2 bolts accessed from underneath, and then 2 little tabs at the front that you have to depress and pull it off. Now it's time to remove the big body panel. This is held on with 7 different bolts, and they're a combination of long and short shafts, so pay attention to where they come out of and make sure you label them so you know where to put them when you're reassembling. But the bolts are here, 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 one at the bottom, and then one up under here. Once you have those all out, you just undo a few clips by lifting up at the back and then going around to the front. Then you can lift this body piece away. Now that we have the bodywork removed, we're going to grab the front bracket and fish it up onto the front subframe of the motorcycle. To mount this bracket, we use 2 of the M8 bolts. The longer socket cap bolt fits in from the top. And on this 850, we use the shorter of the hex drive bolts. This is a 25mm long one, and this comes in from the front. Make sure you put anti-seize on these bolts and use 2 washers and 1 M8 nylock nut for each bolt. Now that we've got the front bracket installed and tightened down, it's time to put all that bodywork back on in the reverse order that you removed it, and then we'll move on to installing the crash bars. Now that the front bracket has been mounted and all the bodywork's been reinstalled, we're going to come over to the throttle tube side of the motorcycle, and we're going to start by removing this bolt from the center of the forward-most engine mount. This bolt is awfully tight from the BMW factory, so make sure you got a good tool to put on it, and you can just push the bodywork out of the way just enough to get access to the head of the bolt. When you remove this bolt, be sure to set it somewhere safe because you are going to reuse it when you're mounting the crash bar on the clutch lever side of the motorcycle. Once you have the bolt out, take the crash bar and slide the front piece over the bracket that we installed on the front already, and then let the rear end of it just set down right here on the radiator hose. Now we take the M12 socket cap bolt from the Touratech hardware pack. Be sure to grease this bolt up with some wheel bearing grease or a little bit of engine oil because we're going to have to tighten her up real tight. And you also need the 7mm M12 spacer. So the 7mm spacer goes up against the engine mount, then the crash bar goes on, then the bolt goes through. All right, now that we have that bolt just a little bit tight, we're going to take this bolt that we removed from this side and head over to the clutch lever side of the motorcycle to work on the crash bar over there. On the clutch lever side of the motorcycle, we also need to remove the bolt from the forward uppermost engine mount here. So we're going to use the same Torx T55 to loosen that. And once we pull that bolt out, we're going to put the 54mm spacer in the hole and then line the crash bar up here and then slide it over the front. The 54mm spacer has a small cut made in it. Make sure that the smaller diameter side is facing in towards the motorcycle when you install it. With the crash bar resting in place, we're going to take the 100mm long bolt that came out of the other side of the motorcycle. This is the factory BMW bolt, and we screw it in here on this side. Make sure you leave this bolt just a little bit loose so you can adjust the fit when we're running the bolts in at the front. Now that the crash bars are loosely fitted to both sides, grab the 4 M6 button head bolts with 1 washer and 1 nut each. Make sure you put anti-seize on each one of these bolts and come up under the beak here, and at the front you just thread the bolts in from the front and put the nut on the back side. The paper instructions differ a little bit from reality here. On the back side of the crash bar, they have a cutout that's just large enough to hold this nylock nut, so you don't even need to put a tool on it. In order for that to work, you have to put the washer at the button head side of the bolt rather than at the nut side. So follow the video instructions rather than the paper instructions there. It'll make it easier. So we're going to put all 4 bolts in here, and then we'll tighten them down once we're done. Now that all 4 of these button head bolts are installed, go through with a 4mm Allen tool and tighten each one of them down until they're just hand tight. These have nylock nuts on each one, so you don't need to get them very tight at all. Now that the front bolts are in place, it's time to torque down these rear bolts. We go for 90 Newton meters, which is about 66 foot-pounds. Torque is exactly the same on the other side, so go do that now. And with that, the installation of these upper crash bars for the BMW F850GS is complete. I think these bars look great on the bike. They follow the body lines, and they're super sturdy. They're really going to protect this bike in the event of a fall on or off-road. If you want to see more products that we make for motorcycles, visit our website, touratech-usa.com. And while you're on our YouTube page, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when we release more videos just like this.